Imagine traveling to the farthest reaches of the map, past the last stone and the last tree, into a void where the horizon vanishes. Out there, you might encounter the sights of the afterlife and cosmic machinery that defies every law of physics you know. If the door were open, would you walk through? In the Arabian Nights, Prince Buluqiya didn't just imagine it, he lived it. He held uncontested command over a wealthy kingdom, surrounded by every comfort a palace could offer. But the luxury felt like a cage. He was haunted by the suspicion that his walls were hiding a much larger, more terrifying reality. His departure was a scandal. He walked away from his throne, took no guards, and carried only the barest supplies. To his subjects, it looked like a descent into madness. To Buluqiya, it was the only way to see the world as it truly was. This point represents a single human perspective. It is straining against a boundary of knowledge that is constantly receding and growing more complex. Buluqiya's journey was a collision between this finite point and an infinite universe. Exploration only truly begins when the safety of the known world is gone. By leaving his kingdom behind, Buluqiya traded his identity as a prince for the chance to see the truth. He pushed deep into environments that didn't care if he lived or died. He crossed deserts where the silence was heavy, and mountains so high they seemed to pierce the edge of the sky. He met travelers and guides who didn't speak the language of merchants or kings. Their knowledge came from sources that bypassed traditional science, a clear sign that Buluqiya was moving into a space where the old rules of the world no longer applied. The farther he went, the less of his old life remained. Hunger, exhaustion, and the weight of the wind began to dismantle him. He was no longer a prince in silk. He was a body struggling to survive a storm that didn't even notice he was there. This process is fundamentally known as ego erosion. When the brain is forced into a state of raw survival for long enough, it loses the capacity to maintain the performance of pride. You stop being a person with a title and become a witness to the environment. Buluqiya soon saw things that forced his mind to stretch. He stood in gardens of perfect light and fragrance, only to turn a corner and face the suffocating heat and shadow of a punishing fire. These weren't just sights for his eyes, they were tests for his endurance. He was witnessing the building blocks of the universe, the extremes of reward and consequence that underpin existence. As the physical world became more violent and vast, the mental space required to maintain his royal identity evaporated. He was being forced to shrink, to become a smaller, more focused version of himself, just to survive the weight of what he was seeing. Finally, Buluqiya reached a hard limit, the shore of a vast, dark ocean. This was the boundary of everything he understood. Looking into the depths, he saw creatures the size of cities and biological systems that had thrived for eons, completely ignoring the tiny man standing on the sand. They functioned within a logic that had nothing to do with human needs. In this place, his crown was just a piece of metal. His decrees were just noise. The universe was showing him its massive indifference to human authority. Compare human influence to these universal systems. Every war and throne is overshadowed by the sheer volume of the cosmic machine. The reality is unavoidable. We aren't the center of the story. We are a footnote in a much larger system. Having lost his status, his strength, and his sense of importance, Buluqiya was left with nothing but the raw desire to see the world without filters. Standing at the end of the world proves that human control is an illusion. When you realize you command nothing, you are finally open to seeing everything. The journey eventually turned back toward the palace. Buluqiya retraced his steps, leaving the edge of the world behind and returning to the kingdom he had once ruled. The man who walked back through the gates was unrecognizable. The restless, demanding prince was gone. In his place was someone who moved with a quiet, steady presence, as if he were tuned to a frequency no one else could hear. Buluqiya didn't bring back gold or artifacts. He returned with the realization that the universe's scale makes human pride impossible. He had seen the gears of the world turning, and the sight had left him in a state of permanent peace. This diagram shows the mechanic of his transformation. The farther you push outward toward the boundaries of the world, the more pressure the universe exerts on you. Eventually, that pressure snaps back, funneling all that external exploration directly into your own internal awareness. He lived the rest of his days on a throne, but he was no longer a slave to his status. He understood that real wealth isn't the gold in the vault, it's the clarity of mind gained from seeing the truth and surviving it. We think the goal of a journey is to find something new in the world, but as Buluqiya discovered, the most important journeys are the ones that break our illusions. We don't go to the edge of the world to change the map. We go to change ourselves.